Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert with the Ted Show. That took a few minutes. I'm not sure why, but I am very happy to be here. It's Gratitude Tuesday, so make sure you say what you're grateful for. I'm excited to have Michael Willoughby from Molecular Photos on the show today. What a fascinating, I love art. Obviously, dealing with this whole cancer insanity. And so, Michael's company, Molecular Photos, has this cool concept that I personally have never heard of before. And so I'm very excited to be able to share that with all of you. So welcome, Michael.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Ted. It's a pleasure being on the show, and I am so happy and grateful to get here and share my story with you. So thank you for having me.
I think the whole concept is fascinating. I obviously am a novice at this, so and by novice, I know enough about what I read. So share with them the journey. Share with them a little bit about
Sure.
you, and then how you got to this concept.
Okay. Obviously, I've been in the laboratory industry for over 20 years, and I've been very blessed to have such a strong presence both in the lab and the pathology world as a youngster, growing up and seeing the whole industry evolve. And just during somewhat of the twilight of my previous company and career, I was talking to my wife, and I said, something missing for us, and we've always tried to figure out a componentry on giving back, but we really didn't know what we should be giving back to, and I wanted to make sure that we gave back in a way that perpetuated long past us being here. And one day I was with a pathologist, and I was just looking at some brain cancer cells, and actually this particular slide was not cancerous, but it was just very unique. And so I asked the pathologist to let me have a picture of that particular slide we were looking at. Is called neurothecoma, and I got a graphic design person, and I added some color to it that took maybe 5 or 6 hours to really creatively delve deep into that particular slide, and then shared it with a couple of physicians of mine. And I said, hey, what do you think about this artwork? And a couple of them actually knew what it was, and they said, well, we'd like to have one for our office. And at that point in time, it just resonated with me that there's just so many people that have had an impact downstream in every part of their life of some sort, where a loved one was affected by cancer of some sort, and that how cool could it be to have molecular images made into art that actually fights back at cancer and research and patient care. And so last May I came up, or last May we launched, and it's been going well. We have lots of now survivors that are coming through the website saying they'd like to get theirs to put on the website where physicians can buy, and a piece of it actually goes back to Prostate Cancer Foundation, Susan G. Komen Foundation, all over. We have lots of different partners throughout the world right now. So I'm very blessed to just be part of the journey and the initiative, but I see something of what we built to grow a life of its own.
I love the fact that you are really a scientist by trade. And so a lot of times the left brain, which I think is science, and the right brain, which is the little bit that I have left, that's not always a marriage. That's not always, they don't go hand in hand a lot of times. And so did you always have an interest in art, or was that just this epiphany? Like, where did that come into play?
Well, it was kind of a little bit of a higher being that I think kind of melted it all together, because you're right, the left brain and right brain. I'm a left brain guy, and it all kind of melted into the right side. But I've been in actually thousands of doctors' offices in my career, and hospital settings, and sometimes I just notice, and I am a lover of art, but I just noticed that most of the art in these areas were not clinically relevant. And whether you're in a urology practice or an OB-GYN practice, gastroenterology, neurosurgeon, I saw pictures of fly fishing. I saw pictures of skyscrapes, and the feeling of molecular art within those practices just kind of hit me all of a sudden that, hey, we can find a niche in helping fight cancer through its clinically relevant artwork. And a lot of the images that we have and pieces that we have on the site, some are from stuff that we've procured with the pathology relationships we have, and some of it is from the consumers just going through our site, downloading a form, and us finding their own slide. So it's building its own ecosystem. But yes, melting the left and right side of the brain. Even though I'm a scientist, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I'm using that scientific knowledge that I have to help others.
I love that part too. So let's talk about the giving back. You mentioned earlier that you and your wife always felt like that was a component that was important to you. What is it that people can do? So you get the slide. Like, let's say I give you a slide of my cancer cells. And then what happens? What happens next? What's the process?
So the process is basically you download an authorization form that says, hey, this is for the purpose of artwork. In HIPAA and everything like that, we've got to make sure that private information is protected, right? You send that in. We have people that can procure that slide from a pathology relationship standpoint. They sign off, they send it they upload it to our site, and then we have graphic designers that can work with a color palette. It takes, I would say, about 6 to 7 hours, and then we have that ready for our store. We can frame it, or we put it in strong plastic acrylic, because a lot of the medical facilities like 4 different corner mountings on their wall. Right. And when anyone buys a piece of artwork, at the checkout, there's what organization do you want to give back to? And they get to choose. So a lot of the physicians we talked to, they said, hey, we want to be able to choose where the give back goes. Maybe they're buying it for somebody else. It may not be relevant to their practice. And so it may not be something for urology, but they're buying something different. So for me, it's just about giving back to everything. So let the buyer choose where it goes back. 15% goes back to the actual institution that they're donating to. And then if it's a personalized image, anytime something's purchased, 5% goes back to the patient themselves. It could be for bills. It could be for anything that's amounted through this journey of cancer.
That's interesting. That's fascinating. So do you target? I'm fascinated. Let's go back to the patient really fast. So the patient gets involved. We were talking earlier before we went live that you actually have a tab on your website that's Survivor Art. Can you talk about that?
Yes, and this kind of morphed. My initial business model was making sure to procure all these images, but as consumers started taking a little bit of interest, and I think at first it's a little bit shock factor there. Ooh, I don't know if I want a picture of this. But a lot of people have this resonance of, hey, look how proud I am of fighting this, and I want to help others and take it beyond. So Lee Silverstein was one of the first ones that signed on, and we procured his image. Now he has his own podcast like you about the Colorectal Cancer Alliance that he's supporting, and his image is one of the most spectacular ones in the gallery. And so we've got we got one supermodel that's going through the process right now. She herself has built her company called Previver, where it's for elected mastectomies. And so she's being loaded into the site. So we're getting a lot of traction from just organically from survivors that want to help as well and can see the mission.
So I had some people ask, and by the way, hey, Lily, Ernest, Christina, Barbara, hey, everybody who's on, we appreciate you. I had some people ask, because, that's what I love to do promos for, is because people then will ask questions prior to the show. So any plans to do any other diseases in pictures?
Yes, I want to keep the sensitivity in mind There's been lots of requests for just recently pictures of the COVID virus, that kind of thing. And I have plans for other parts of the company, but diseases and other things like that will come from the request of either the patients themselves or the clinical world that would like to turn some things into art. Our next potential venture is going to be into actually just creating 3D images of the actual extraction that, hey, in the old days, people used to go home with their gallstones after they've had gallbladder surgery. And so I'm working on a project right now where whether it's a heart surgeon, whether it's a neurosurgeon, and they've got a pituitary biopsy or heart biopsy or whatever, to take a 3D image and make it into a certain desktop size of their particular battle that they've had there, that is actually a replica of their own surgery. All of that will go back to fighting and helping with cancer, though.
What is it about the cancer cells? Like, is that one behind you, by the way? I mean, you have a beautiful piece of art behind you.
It's one of my favorites. It's people call it my Monet,
but what it looks like.
It does look like a lot. And frankly, the initiative is a bit spiritual for me, where I feel like our bodies are really beautiful, and they do so many amazing things. If we just, I look at things a little bit differently. I look into the molecular side and I say, wow, how do we survive? And we do these things so amazing. Our brains work, our hearts work, our liver works, our lungs work. But these are the cells that run these things, right? So I look a little bit deeper into things. So I'm very blessed, I feel like, to have come up with this idea. But that's actually a picture of it's called ductal carcinoma in situ. It's a very, it's a breast cancer cell, very common, very curable, but it turned into something pretty amazing in terms of art. And soon we'll have QR codes on every piece of art that goes out, where if you're in the doctor's office, you scan that QR code and you'll see the story behind that.
That's amazing.
So she allowed me to buy one for her and for myself, so I just put it on my wall.
I love it. To me, that from this distance, it looks like a Starry Night, Vincent Van Gogh.
That's exactly right.
And so it just but then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, I guarantee you that's got to be one of the cells on art in the back.
And then on the other side of the brain, I got my genetic stuff over here.
You got the detailed stuff. Yeah, wow. The other side is where I paid attention, obviously. So what about if I had a lot of people ask before we went live, what if the person wants input? Because we do a lot of cancer shows. Let me back up and explain why. We do a lot of cancer survivor shows. We try to have guests on, survivors on. So I have a lot of following there. So their question was, if they give you the cells, can they have any input into the art?
They can have a color palette input. So when we procure the slide from the pathology department, we have two images. We have one at a 40x magnification and 100x magnification. The one behind me is 100x, where it really goes down deep into the cell. And let's just say this particular individual liked blues and browns in their game room. So we went ahead and sort of colorized it to match that color palette. It might be a little bit cost prohibitive if I did that like 6 different renditions, but we have some slight color palette adjusting, and it's common for people to say, "Hey, man, I really like that." What we try to do is keep the integrity of the cells in place, so the medical community actually knows exactly what they're looking at. And right now the scorecard is about a 75%. If I showed 10 of them to a pathologist or a doctor in their field, about 7 of them would get what it is, and the other 3 would kind of look at it interesting.
Have you had anybody that came in that you were surprised by their story or surprised by their age or anybody that you've gotten the background on. I mean, I love the story part of this. So I love the art. And of course, I love anything that's behind the art, which is the story. Anything surprise you or anything you thought, God, that's just extraordinary?
I think the most things that have touched me in a way that is profound is the attitude of the people that are coming through that want to support it. We have a stage 4 colon cancer survivor who in the last 30 days now had been diagnosed with leukemia. And his story is amazing. He did clinical trials with a pharmaceutical company, and he got cancer free. He recently, he certainly wouldn't mind me saying his name, Mr. Middleton, and now he's diagnosed again. But I've never seen so much of a blessed individual that he knows that he's got a purpose in life to do good things. And so when someone reaches out and they say, hey, let's talk, I'm ready to listen. And I think it just helps organically what we're doing. Not surprising stories, just touching stories. And I have never had cancer. I've never been diagnosed, but I've been around it my whole career. And so I feel an obligation to do this. And at first, people were kind of a little bit taken back from what I was doing, but I think it's catching on that there's a big purpose to it.
Well, I think so. Some art that I've purchased in the past has to do with a celebration of some kind. And so I feel like if you look at the art as, okay, I conquered that, there's that's on my wall in a positive way, and look at the things that you've overcome. Or for a lot of cancer survivors, cancer was a wake-up call and a reset. And so it's a celebration of how they were able to go in a completely different direction, change the trajectory of their lives. And so there's a lot of positive, but I understand, like, it's funny because I think, do I want to look at that if I'm a survivor? Do I want to look at that? And I think I would. I personally would want to go, you know what? Yeah, I want to see that sucker I conquered.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure to get yours for sure. Get it all colorized and really mounted nicely. One thing to really keep in mind, though, these are sensitive topics, and my mission and goal in the medical community is to have clinically relevant stuff that the physicians can actually use as education. We have one doctor in Louisiana that wrote a very nice testimonial for us, and he said, "Hey, all my patients, he's a surgical oncologist. Stop at this picture, and this is where you're at. I'm going to move you away from right here." And he uses it to sort of explain what's going on molecularly
So cool.
to her breast cancer. And so it's used in different ways, but one thing it's used in invariably all throughout is it starts conversations and gets people talking.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that people are afraid to, a lot of times, don't know how to broach this subject, don't know how to talk about it, or have funny superstitions about talking about it. I mean, I have more people, very few people will say the C word to me. I've noticed that in the short time that I've been diagnosed. And I'm like, it's okay to say cancer. It's not, I don't know. I take it differently, but I know what you're saying is right. It opens it up. It's easier to talk about that and go, wow, is that your cell? And then lead into, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Than it is to come out for a lot of people and just mention. So lots of great conversations.
Well, I mean, collectively, people got to get together to make an impact. I don't think any one organization, any one person, any one group can make an impact, but collectively, we all know that there's been impact in cancer in some parts of our lives, but we all collectively can fight back at it.
Agreed.
In a positive
All right,
way.
so tell me how somebody reaches out to you. What's the best way to reach out? What's the best way to I don't know, just figure out, maybe they've got a story or a journey they want to share. Maybe they want to have art. Maybe they want to purchase art.
The best way is just right through the website, and there's 3 different ways right there that they can reach out, contact us, get on our informational newsletters that go out, and we have some information that directs them into the channels to do that. They can call me personally. It's all right there. We're excited to do this. I want to make sure to reiterate that the consumer side just took to life of its own, so we had to kind of pivot the website to make sure to accommodate all that. So you just go on there, contact us, and somebody will reach out and say, hey, are you wanting to get one done, or are you just curious? So lots of curiosity right there. The patient has to do a little bit of work, though. They have to fill out a release form and let us know where they had a biopsy done so we can talk to the right people. And I would prefer us do all that work, to be honest with you, because we know how to talk to the pathology group and say, hey, this, and get them, make sure that they upload it correctly with the right high resolution and stuff like that. Usually that pathology group takes an explanation too, because this is all so new. They're going, wait a minute, what do you want this for? And so they get to allocate. We pay them a little bit of money to get that, and they usually allocate all of it to cancer research.
I'm not. I'm always excited and surprised on some level, but when I have a guest, because I love the journey, but the topic, what you're doing, is so unique.
Yeah.
And big kudos to you all for creating this space for people, both on the medical professional side and for survivors, people going through. I think that's part of the cathartic process for a lot of people who are going through it. I would imagine everybody releases differently and everybody deals with things differently. And so why not have a piece of art of something that you conquered? I love this whole thought process. I ask everybody, every single guest, what did you personally do, Michael, aside from molecular photos and everything else, to stay sane and stay focused and creative during the lockdown?
Well, that's a really tough question, because it's hard to lock me down and stay. I have come to work. I have scientists working and running specimens and stuff like that, so I felt obligated to be up here with them. It's probably a better question for my wife, because she seems to be all locked up at the house. But overall, I do feel like this has created a little bit of pause in everybody's lives to reflect on, are we so busy in life? What are we doing in life that's productive and that's meaningful and things like that? My wife is certainly a driver of what I do. And she said, Michael, I think this has caused us to pause and just reflect how blessed we are. So, I feel like things will get back to normal. There seem to be getting closer and closer and closer all the time. I'm in the know of the scientific side of things, and I see great things ahead. I think it happened for a reason, and I think people just need to be aware of what's going on a lot more.
Agreed. All right, man, you are awesome. Thank you, Michael Willoughby.
Thank you.
Thank you. Molecularphotos.com. You guys should check that out. We will both show everybody who showed us love on the show it back. So just give us a little bit when we're done. Thanks, Michael, so much. I really appreciate everything you're doing. I think it's a big, huge blessing. So thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, guys, we'll be back. I'm not sure when, but soon. Reach out to Michael. See you later.